Captain Elia's heart stumbled over the jagged rubble, his boots scraping sparks off the blackened metal of the fallen starship. Smoke choked the air, stinging his lungs, but he didn't dare stop. Somewhere above, the alien warships had halted their barrage for now. He didn't trust it, not after 3 months of living through firestorms that could vaporize a planet. He reached the summit of the cratered hill, heart hammering, and froze. Across the battlefield, in the golden light of the dying twin suns, stood her, Queen Lyria of the Jari. Her skin gleamed like polished ivory, her dark brown hair coiled into a crown-worthy updo, and her piercing blue eyes locked on his with a mix of challenge and curiosity. The ceremonial veil of her white lace gown fluttered despite the heat of war, and the faint glint of blue gemstones on her crown caught the light like icy stars. Elias swallowed hard. He had trained for combat, for betrayal, for death, but not for this. A voice crackled in his communicator, cutting through the chaos. Heart status. It was General Moore. Elias ignored it. His gaze never left hers. Lyria raised one slender hand, pointing at him with a regal, almost playful certainty. Then, to his shock, she spoke. Captain Hart, we end this war not with swords but with vows. He blinked. What? The words sounded absurd even as they left his mouth. Vows, marriage, to the alien queen who had burned half his fleet. You will marry me, tonight, in public, or your people die. Her tone was soft, almost lyrical, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. He laughed. It came out bitter and hollow. You can't be serious. I am. Her blue eyes never wavered. And you will say yes, or there is no tomorrow. The wind shifted, carrying the acrid smell of ozone and scorched earth. Behind him, Elias could hear the faint hum of reinforcements arriving too late to help. His mind raced. This was insane, impossible, yet terrifyingly true. A fake marriage, she had said. A political move to end a war that had cost billions of lives. But as he stared into her eyes, Elias wondered, could a lie really become forever? Before he could answer, a massive shadow passed over the battlefield. A Jari warship descended with a deafening roar, its underbelly glowing like molten metal. And from it, Lyria's voice rang out again, calm, commanding, and strangely intimate. Choose, Captain. Marry me or watch everything you love burn. Elias clenched his fists. He didn't know if he was trembling from fear, anger, or something dangerously like desire. One decision now could save billions or doom him entirely. And the Queen was waiting, patient and unstoppable, beneath the shattered sky. Elias felt the weight of every life on that blasted battlefield pressing down on him. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. Fine, he said, barely above a whisper. I'll do it. Lyria's eyes glimmered, not with triumph, but with a quiet, unnerving satisfaction. Good, she said, and with a delicate flick of her wrist, a shimmering platform unfolded beneath her feet. The Jari warship's hull had transformed into a floating cathedral, adorned with impossible curves and golden filigree that seemed to hum with energy. The ceremony begins at once. Elias hesitated. His uniform felt out of place among the delicate glow of alien architecture. Soldiers and diplomats crowded the edges of the platform, their eyes wary, suspicious, even fearful. Elias' own crew whispered among themselves, gripping their weapons, though none dared act. Lyria approached him slowly, her white lace gown brushing the metallic floor. She smelled faintly of something floral, something sharp, something humanly intoxicating. Elias swallowed again. This is insane, he muttered under his breath. It's diplomacy, she replied softly, and survival. A sudden chime echoed through the floating hall. Holographic tendrils of light spun around them, weaving symbols he didn't recognize, contracts of marriage, written in the Jari language, binding by law and honor. He looked down at his hands, wondering if he could even fake devotion. Lyria placed her hand on his arm. Her touch was cool, firm, commanding. Speak your vow, she said. Her voice was gentle now, but it carried the full authority of her world. Elias' throat tightened. Aye, Captain. Elias' heart, agree to marry Queen Lyria of the Jari to end this war. The words sounded hollow even to him, yet when he spoke them, the holographic tendrils flared brightly, sealing the contract. The crowd erupted in applause, or was it relief? He couldn't tell. Behind the cheers, he could hear distant engines stirring. The warships were retreating. They had won. The war was over. And yet the Queen's hand remained in his. Her fingers lingered, light and commanding, brushing against his own calloused ones. Elias felt an unexpected warmth, a spark that made his chest tighten. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time he saw not a conqueror, but something dangerously like hope or longing. Before he could process it, a low vibration pulsed through the floor. The platform shuddered. A voice boomed from the ship's core. "Captain Hart, the treaty ends today, but the Queen expects her bride to honor the vow, not just today, forever." Elia's stomach dropped. He had thought this was a strategy, a performance, but Lyria's gaze didn't waver. There was no joke here, no bluff, she meant it. And somewhere deep inside, he realized a terrifying truth. This war-ending wedding was only the beginning. Elias woke in a chamber that felt like a palace carved from light itself. The walls shimmered with soft gold, and the floor beneath his boots pulsed faintly, almost alive. He rubbed his eyes. The memory of the ceremony still burned in his mind. The vows, the contract, her touch, and for the first time he wondered if he hadn't made a mistake. Lyria was already there, standing by the tall, arched window. Her silhouette was perfect against the twin suns, her crown catching the light and her gown whispering over the floor. She didn't turn when he entered. "You slept well, I hope," she said, her voice smooth and commanding, yet carrying a hint of something tender. I don't know if I slept at all," Elias admitted. His voice sounded foreign in this alien place, rough against the serene hum of her world. She finally turned, and for a moment she looked almost human, vulnerable, not just regal. "Good," she said. "You must be alert. Even in peace there are threats. Not all my people agree with this alliance." Elias frowned. "Threats?" He glanced at the floating city outside the window, ships gliding like silver fish, soldiers marching in patterns that defied gravity. "This, your world, it's incredible, but why me? Why this marriage?" Her blue eyes softened, but the question carried weight. "Because you are human, and humans are unpredictable, bold, fierce, and they survive in ways my kind rarely does. I needed a symbol. You became it." Elias' chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to insist that he was no symbol, no hero, but every word caught in his throat. He had seen his fleet shattered, the bodies of friends and strangers alike torn apart by her warships. And now, here he was, bound by law and vow, his enemy transformed into the woman who held his life, and his planet in her hands. "Do you trust me?" Lyria asked suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. Elias blinked. He didn't know. He wanted to. He wanted to defy every instinct screaming at him to flee, to fight, to rebel. But as he looked into her eyes, into the alien elegance, the undeniable authority, the subtle humanity, he realized something strange. He didn't want to run. Before he could answer, the floor beneath them trembled. A warning signal flashed across the walls. Shadows moved in the corridors beyond. Lyria's hand found his arm again. "You will need courage," she said softly, "not for war, but for this life. Ours, whether you like it or not." Elias swallowed, a mixture of fear and something like fascination twisting in his gut. The war had ended, yet the true battle, between duty, loyalty, and a dangerously growing desire, was only beginning. And as the Queen led him through halls of glowing crystal, he realized the stakes were no longer survival alone. Now it was trust, love, and the terrifying question of whether he could ever truly call this alien queen his own. Elias followed Lyria through corridors that seemed to shift beneath his feet, glowing with patterns he couldn't understand. Every step felt like trespassing in a world he had no right to enter. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something floral, a scent that clung to him even as he clenched his fists, trying to remind himself he was still in command. still human. "You must understand our customs," Lyria said without looking at him. Her tone was patient, almost maternal, yet edged with steel. "Marriage is not a private affair for these Jari. It is law, loyalty, and legacy." He swallowed. "Legacy." "Yes," she said, finally turning. Her blue eyes softened, but there was a weight behind them that made his chest tighten. "You are now my consort. Our bond is not temporary. You are part of this world. Your people owe me peace and I owe them stability. You owe me honesty." Elias laughed bitterly. "Honesty? Queen Lyria, I just agreed to a war-ending wedding with a woman I've known for hours, and you expect honesty?" Her gaze sharpened. "Do not test me, Captain. I can be patient, but I am not forgiving of betrayal, not now." They reached a large chamber filled with tables, maps, and holograms of worlds. Her advisors were already assembled, their eyes flicking to Elias with curiosity and thinly veiled suspicion. One elder, tall and angular, muttered something in the Jari tongue. Lyria's crown glimmered, and the translation floated into Elias' mind. "This human may not survive our ways." Elias felt a cold knot of fear, not for himself, he was a soldier, but for the fragile truce that now hung on his every word. The meeting began. Lyria presented treaties, alliances, and plans to stabilize the galaxy. Every so often her hand brushed his, guiding him to nod, to respond, to act the part of the perfect consort. Her touch was electric. He hated it. And yet, he noticed the small ways she observed him. A fleeting glance, a tilt of the head, a faint smile when he argued effectively. By the end, Elias was exhausted, but the alien queen's gaze lingered. "You did well today," she said softly, stepping close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. "Perhaps you are learning our ways faster than I expected." Elias looked down at his boots, the tension between them humming like the ship beneath them. "Learning isn't the same as caring," he muttered, but the words sounded weaker than he intended. Lyria smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "No," she whispered, "but caring may come." And for the first time, Elias felt something unfamiliar and dangerous. A flicker of desire for the woman who had once been his enemy, who had demanded he marry her forever, and who now seemed more human than he ever imagined. A sudden alarm cut through the room, lights flashed red, the advisors shouted in their tongue. Lyria's hand gripped his arm. "You wanted peace, Captain," she said, her voice urgent. "Now we must fight to keep it." Elias' heart sank. The war had ended, but another battle had just begun, and this one was far more personal. The alarm screamed through the palace, shaking the glowing floors under Elias' boots. Outside, the city shimmered like a golden web, but streaks of crimson light cut across the horizon. Raiders, rogue Jari factions opposed to the peace treaty, had infiltrated the outer sectors. Lyria grabbed his arm, her fingers locking around his with surprising strength. "We go together," she commanded. Her eyes burned, blue gemstones catching the light like twin suns. "You survive this with me, or not at all." Elias swallowed hard, heart hammering, but he didn't protest. The battlefield outside looked impossibly beautiful, deadly, and alien. Explosions rippled through the floating platforms, sending sparks and shards of metal into the sky. For the first time, he realized the stakes weren't just political, they were personal. They moved together through the chaos, ducking behind glowing barricades, firing plasma rifles at shadowy attackers. Every time their hands brushed, every time she leaned close to whisper orders in his ear, a current ran through him that he couldn't control. Elias had fought wars, faced death countless times, but nothing made his chest pound like this queen beside him. A grenade exploded nearby, knocking them both to the ground. Dust filled his lungs. Lyria rolled on top of him instinctively, shielding him with her body. For a heartbeat, their faces were inches apart. His pulse raced. "Are you always this fearless?" he managed to gasp. She smirked, brushing a strand of hair from her face despite the chaos. "Fear is a choice," she said, "and I choose to survive with you." Her words struck him harder than any blast. Elias felt a strange mix of fear, admiration, and something more intimate, an undeniable pull toward the queen who had once been his enemy and was now standing on him like a shield. They scrambled to their feet as another wave of attackers surged. Elias covered her while she dispatched a foe with precise, elegant movements that seemed impossible for her delicate frame. He couldn't help but stare, torn between awe and something far more human, longing. When the skirmish finally subsided, the battlefield eerily quiet except for distant alarms, they leaned against each other for support. Breathing hard, dust and sweat clinging to their skin, Elias caught her gaze. For the first time, Lyria's mask of regal composure faltered, revealing the raw intensity beneath. "You," he began, voice low and rough, "you could have left me back there." She shook her head, brushing his cheek with her gloved hand. "Never, you belong here with me." The words weren't just political anymore. Elias' chest tightened. He had agreed to a fake marriage to end a war, but now, standing in the aftermath of violence with her hand warm in his, he realized the truth was shifting. Something real, terrifying, thrilling, impossible was beginning. Above them, the twin suns set, painting the sky crimson. And in that fleeting moment of calm, Elias understood. The war had ended, but the battle for trust, for loyalty, and for love had only just begun. Days passed in a blur of protocol and quiet tension. Elias moved through the palace like a soldier trapped in silk, his uniform stiff, his heart stiffer. Every corridor whispered of her presence. Every flicker of light reflected off her crown reminded him that this marriage, this forever, was no longer a performance. Lyria found him in the garden chamber one evening, a place where crystal flowers glowed with a soft blue light. "You are thinking too much," she said, sitting gracefully on a bench carved from luminescent stone. Her gown shimmered, catching the light like a river of moonlight. "I have to," Elias muttered, packing. It's not real. I agreed to survive a war, not this." She studied him silently, her blue eyes unwavering. "You think it's not real because it is dangerous, because it is new, but danger does not make feelings less true, Elias." He stopped, startled. "Feelings?" His voice cracked despite himself. "Queen Lyria, you've got to understand, I—" "Stop calling me that," she interrupted gently, rising to her feet. She approached him slowly, the air between them charged. "Call me Lyria. If we are to live in this world, you must learn more than words. You must see me, understand me, feel me." Elia's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed retreat, but every heartbeat demanded otherwise. He stepped closer, unable to resist the pull she had on him. "And if I fail?" "Then we fail," she admitted softly. Her fingers brushed his, hesitant but electric. "But we learn together." The touch sent a jolt through him. His hands, rough from years of war, hovered near hers. He wanted to hold her, to feel her weight against him, yet he feared the intimacy would shatter the fragile alliance they had barely begun to build. "Together," he repeated, testing the word. And for the first time it felt like more than a treaty, more than a contract, it felt like possibility. Then unexpectedly the soft glow of the garden shifted. Holographic projections of alien stars spun around them, illuminating the delicate lines of her face, the vulnerability she rarely showed. Lyria leaned close, her breath warm against his cheek. "Elias, do you feel it?" His words faltered. He didn't know if it was fear, longing, or awe. "I think I do." Her lips brushed his hand in a gesture both formal and intimate. A promise, a question, a dare. "Then do not hide from it, not from me, not from yourself." For a long moment, Elias simply held her gaze, the twin suns, light fading beyond the palace walls. The war was over, yes, but the battlefield had changed. Now it was their hearts, their trust, their very souls that hung in the balance. And in that charged silence, Elias understood something dangerous and undeniable. The queen who had once been his enemy was no longer just an ally, no longer just a symbol. She was real. And so, terrifyingly, was the pull between them. Outside, the palace lights shimmered. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow moved, an unseen threat, a reminder that peace was never guaranteed. But inside, Elias and Lyria took the first cautious step toward something neither of them had expected: love. The palace trembled beneath them. Raiders had breached the inner sanctum, and alarms screamed like wild beasts. Elias gripped Lyria's hand, pulling her close as they ducked behind a crystal pillar. Every muscle in his body screamed fight, but his heart thudded for her, not the battle. Elias, Lyria whispered, her voice sharp yet trembling, we cannot falter now, not as leaders, not as each other. He glanced at her. For once she wasn't queen or warlord or negotiator. She was a woman standing in the middle of chaos, her dark brown hair tangled, her gown dusted with fragments of crystal light, her eyes blazing blue fire. And for the first time, Elias realized the truth he had tried to deny. He would follow her anywhere. Through fire, through war, through forever. Then we fight together, he said, voice low and steady. The next moments were chaos made flesh. Energy blasts cracked the walls, shattering shards of the luminous palace. Elias and Lyria moved in unison, their actions instinctive. She deflected strikes with a grace he had never seen in battle, and he covered her when she had to move too far, too fast. Each time their hands brushed, each time she leaned close for guidance or support, sparks, human and something else, ignited in him. When the last raider fell, the palace fell silent. Dust hung in the air, glowing softly in the aftermath of destruction. Elias sank to one knee, pulling Lyria toward him. We survived, he said, breathless. And his voice caught. I want more than a treaty, more than a vow on paper. I want you, really, truly, forever. Lyria's eyes softened, a rare smile breaking the regal mask. She cupped his face with both hands. Elia's heart, she whispered, this was never a game. I demanded forever because I knew that some bonds cannot be broken by time or fear. And now you are proving it, not because of law, not because of duty, but because you choose me. The words struck him deeper than any battlefield, any starship, any life-or-death mission. Elias leaned into her, lips brushing hers in a tentative, electric first kiss, full of fear, desire, and promise. Her hands threaded through his hair, and for the first time, war, politics, and obligation melted away. There was only them, heart to heart, fire to fire, forever beginning. Behind them, the twin suns rose again, casting gold over a battered but enduring world. Lyria rested her forehead against his. We will face more storms, she said softly, more enemies, more doubts. Elias smiled, pulling her closer. Then we face them together, always. And in that moment the galaxy was vast, the future uncertain and yet impossibly beautiful. A fake marriage had ended the war, but love, raw and undeniable, had begun. Forever was no longer a threat, it was a promise.